Hello friends, in this section we will discuss about CSS selectors and we will cover all the topics like ID selector, class selectors, element selectors, grouping selectors and so on. And in this we will discuss both things, practical part and theoretical part too. So let's begin. Basically, what is selectors? So selectors is used to give the CSS property to the particular element or where we want to give the CSS property. So in a we have various types of selectors like element selectors, class selectors, ID selectors, grouping selectors, pseudo selectors. But what is the syntax of a selector? So if we talk about the syntax of selector, then first of all we will write the selector name. That can be a class element like a h1 tag, p tag, div tag, and id2. After this we will declare the properties can be like a color, and the value of that property can be a red, blue, black, and other properties like font size and border and so on. After this we will close the curly bracket. So this is a simple syntax to write selectors. Now we will discuss all the selectors like elements, class, id, and so on. So first of all, we will discuss about element selectors. So basically in this we use tags like a div, P, span, li, a, etc. To give the style. So if we talk about the syntax of element selector, then first of all we will write the tag name. Tag name can be a div, p, span, and so on. After this we start the curly brackets and write here our properties like a font size, font color, and border and so on. After this we will close the curly bracket. So this is simple syntax to write a element selector. If we talk about this example, then suppose we have a code in our HTML file, like here we have a tag p, and in this there is a text like this is my text, and I want to give the CSS property to this particular tag p. So how can I do that? By using element selector. In a style.css file we will write this code. First we will write the tag name, that is p. After this start the curly bracket, and here we will write our properties like a color, font size, and border, and etc. After this we will close the curly bracket. So this is a simple use of element selector. Now we will see this code in the PHP editor. So go to the editor. So I just write copy and paste this code. This is my CSS style.css file. I copy this and paste here. Now I go to the here, control save my file, and now the text color should be red of this is my text if the code is right. Here you can see this is my text and this is a red color. So the element selector property applied successfully. So the second is class selectors. Basically in a class selector we use the classes defined in our HTML code. We can define the same class name to more than one element. If we talk about the syntax, then it is just like a tag or an element selector, but in this we use dot. Then after this we write our class name and start the curly brackets. Then we will write the properties and their values, and after this close the curly brackets. If we now let's see the example of class selector. Suppose we have class text style, and in this we have a text like this is my text, and I want to give the style of this is my text. So in our style.css file, I will just make a selector, a class selector, and in this I will start it with the dot, and after this my class name that is text style, and after this start the curly bracket, and here I will write our properties. Suppose I want to give the color red, then I use the property color and the value is red. After this, I will close the curly bracket. Now let's check out this code in our page editor. I just copy this and go to my this. This is a class selector example. So I can just give the proper indent to this, and here is the wrong comma. And in the style.c, now if we check that before write the code in style.css, we check that it should not be a red color. So I just refresh our page. See, this is my text. It is not a it don't have a red color. So I go to my style.css and copy this code and save. Now it should be a red color, otherwise our code is wrong. See, the first time that it was taking from a cache memory, so now when I just remove my cache, this is now the color is red. So our class selector example is working good. So now we will check out the third selector, that is ID selector. So, what is ID selectors? Like a class selectors, as we used class in this, basically we use the ID. We make a ID in our HTML code and use that ID to give the CSS property. So the basic difference between class selectors and ID selectors, we can define the ID one time on a single page. So it is basic. So the basically id selector is used to give the css property to the unique element. So what is the syntax of id selectors? In the id selector we use the hash. So first we will write the hash, after this our id name, and start the curly brackets. In this we will write our all the properties like a font size, color, and so on, and after this close our curly bracket. So let's see the example of this. Suppose we have a code in our HTML like a div, we have a ID text style, and in this we have a text. This is my text, and I want to give the CSS property to this ID. So in a style.css file, I will write first the hash, then after this ID name, here ID is text style, and then start the curly bracket, and here I will put my properties like a color, font size, and so on. Here I am only using color. Then after this close our curly bracket. So now let's check out this in our PHP editor. I just copy this, go to my editor, and this is my PHP editor, and this is ID selector example, and I put my code here, this and this. Now save this. Now it should not be the red color because I did not write the CSS property. So just check that it should not be red color. See ID selector example, and this is my text. Now I will write the CSS property in style.css for this ID text style. So I just copy this and go to the style.css file and put this code and control S. Then Go to the browser and check out this. Now it should see. Now the color is red. Its mean ID selector is working good. So this is a simple example of ID selectors, class selectors, and element selectors. Basically, now we will combine this or make a group of these selectors. So let's check out the other selectors too. So next selector is grouping selectors. Basically, in a grouping selectors, if we want to give the same property to more than one selectors, then we can make group of selectors. It's mean I suppose I want to give the same properties to the ID selector, to the class selector, or to the element selector, then I can make a group and define the same property only once time. So the syntax of grouping selectors is first we will write our first selector, then comma, then after give one space, we will write our second selector, then again comma, and so on. Suppose I want to give the same properties to two selectors, that is ID or a class, then first I will write the ID name, then before id name I will use the hash. After this id name, then comma, then one space, then suppose I want to give the second selector, that is class, then I will use dot and the class name, and after this I will write the properties here and close the curly bracket. You can simply understand this by watching the example of grouping selectors. So suppose I have a code in html like where I have a class group style, and in this there is a text. This is my text, and I also have the other element h1 tag, and in this there is also a text, like a text with the same property like class text style. So what I want to give the same properties to the class group style and the tag h1. So I can perform this by using making a group of selectors, and in the style.css, basically as I discussed in the syntax of a grouping selector, I will write the same code here. First, I will write the class, that is group style, and before class, as you know that we will use the dot. So first write the dot, and after class name, then comma, then one space. After this, the second selector, and here we have a second selector, that is h1 tag. So I write simply h1 and start the curly brackets. Now we will write here the properties like a color, font size, border, and so on, and close the curly brackets. So see the same example on our PHP editor, that it is working or not. So just copy and paste in our PHP editor, notepad plus plus, and write here code, and just give the right indent to that, and use the right comma, control S. Then first we check out that how is it working without css property, and it should not change the color. So see, you can see these are my text, and these are class group, and this is a h1 tag, because it is a h1 tag, so it is bold and a big text. So now we will give the properties by using the style.css, our external file. So just copy this. Now the color should be green of group style, class, and the header one tag elements. So I just paste it. Now the color should be green of both. If it is not, then our code is not working good. So here you can see the color has been changed into green. So it's mean our grouping selector example is also working. So now we go to our next selector. So the next is combining selector. Basically, combining selector, we can divide it into two parts: descendant selector. So what is descendant selector? if we want to give the property to all the descendant element of the parent element, in a simple words, if we want to give the properties to all the child elements of the parent element, then we use descendant selectors. So the syntax of this, first we will write the parent selector. After this, after the one space, we will write the child selectors and open our curly bracket, and here we can write any property which we want to give. Then close the curly bracket. So we can simply understand this in an example. So suppose we have a code like this. We have a class text style, and in the text class text style we have a two child elements, that is a p tag, and both are p tag. So here the text style class is a parent selector, and the p tags are child selectors. So in a style.css file, first we will write the parent selector, that is text style class, and because it's a class, so we will use dot before the text style as we used here in example. After this, we will write the second selector, that is child selectors, and here the child selector is p tag. So I just write the p, and after this, open the curly brackets, and in this we can write here any properties which we want to declare. Here I only use the color red property. So close the curly brackets. Now we will check this code in our editor. So as you can see, I will share this code with you, but you need to share with me your email ID. You can share your email ID uh, in the comment box, and I will share you the whole code with you. The style code, the style file, and the CSS selector .php file too. So now, if I check in a browser, then in a descendant, so you can see that I did not write the properties, but still it is the red color because it is overwriting by my properties this p, because initially I also used element selector where where I use the p tag, and I set the properties for p tag color red. So I should remove this now and write our these properties. Before write here our new code, we should check that now it should not be a red color because I have removed the properties for element selector. It is still red color. So just check this. Why is it happening? Yes, because the class name is text style, and I also have write the code in a style.css to give the color red to the class text style. So I also need to remove this. So you can see that we should, for a checking purpose, uh, we should not use the same class. It's my fault. Now you can see that the color is not red of the descendant selector example. So now I just put the code for a descendant selector example, copy this and paste here in the style.css file. Save my file, and now it should be a red color. Yes, it is a red color. So our descendant selector example is also working. So in a combining selector, the next selector is the child selectors. Basically, in a child selectors, if we want to give the property to the direct child element of the parent element, this should be noted that the direct child element, and we can understand this in an example. So first we will talk about the syntax of this. Like a descendant selectors, it is same like descendant, but first if we will add the parent selector and then use this operator. Basically this operator indicates that the child selector is the direct child of the parent selectors. Then after this we will start the curly bracket and write here all the properties, then close the curly bracket. So see the example. Suppose we have the HTML code and this is like big, little big. So first we will here you can see that we have a child style and this is a topmost class or topmost selector. So it is our parent selector, and in this we have a span tag, and in the span tag we have a p tag. Suppose we want to give the CSS properties to the p tag. So according to this example, the first p tag is not a direct child because before this p tag, uh, it should be passed from the span tag. But the second p tag, which have a text, this is direct child, have a direct child selectors because because there is no any other tags between the child style class and the second p tag. So if we talk about the code in a style.css, then first we will add the parent selector, that is the child style, and after this operator we will add the child selector, that is p tag. And here the first p tag is not a child, is not a direct child because here the span tag is come first before this p tag, but the second p tag is a direct child. So the color should be blue, only the second p tag element, that is this is direct child. So let's check out this in our PHP editor. I just copy this and copy in my PHP editor, child selectors, and just give the right name, save this code. Now first check it without adding the code in a style.css file that it should not be change the CSS property. And now here you can see that this is not a direct child and this is direct child. Both are not blue color, but now I just copy this to give the blue color to the direct child uh, selector. So just go to the style.css file and paste this code, and now check out browser control. You can see that the color did not change of anyone, but why there is a child style class, and oh sorry, I did not change this because the document uh, codes and these codes are different. Now I save this and again perform this action. Now you can see that's only the direct child uh, element changed in a blue color, not the first p tag, because this that was not a direct child. So this is a simple example of a direct uh, child child selector in a combining selector. So now we will move on our next selector. So the next selector is pseudo selectors. This is a little different type of selectors which we discussed with initials. Uh, if we talk about the pseudo selector, then it is just like this. The colon indicates that this is a pseudo selectors, and basically we use it for a button link mostly, or if we want to give the color, or we want if we want to give the properties to the table for alternative rows, then we can use the nth child pseudo selector. So if we about talk about the syntax for this, then first we will write our selectors like a class selector, id selector, tag selectors, and then after this we will write our pseudo selectors. For this we will use colon, then after the pseudo selectors that can be a link, visited, hover, active, and a child. After this, we will start the curly bracket, and we will write here our all the properties which we want to declare, and after this close the curly bracket. So let's check out this in an example. Suppose we have a button where we want that on hover on button, the color or the size or the background color should be changed. So suppose for this, first of all, we will write this selector. Here, button is a tag, or so you can understand this. It's like a element selector. So first, we will write here our tag button. After this, we will write the colon, and after because we want that on hover, the background color should be red. So I used here hover after the colon. You must be remembered that first write the selector, that can be a class, ID or element. Then after this use dot. Then after this the hover link visited. You can uh, experiment by at your site, but I am here only using hover, and I will show you in the code that how is it working now. So close the curly bracket, and let's check out this in our code. So you can easily understand about pseudo selector. So just copy and paste. Where is my, what is this? uh, Pseudo selector, control S. Before give the style in a style.css, let's check out how is it working. You can see here is a button, and on hover it's nothing changed. So go to our style.css file and paste this code to give the background color red on hover on the button. So save this. Now let's check out the same. Yes, you can see after hover now the background color is changing into red. So this is a pseudo selector example. Now we will move on our next selector. So guys, now you can take relief because this is the last selectors. In a CSS selectors, we have many types of unique, many types of different types of selectors, and this is one of them. Basically, in this selector, we use the attribute of our elements. For example, we will see the example later, but first we will see the syntax of CSS attribute selector. First, we will add the selector that can be a ID, that can be an element or a class. After this, we will initialize the attribute that can be a type, because suppose that we have a input type equal to text, and you know that in a input type equal to text, we have a type that is attribute, and the value of that attribute is text. That can be password, email, and so on. Don't worry, you can easily understand this by after see the example, because it's a very simple. Nothing is different in this. After this we will initialize the properties and values and close the curly bracket. So go to the example, because I know you cannot understand this uh, before see the example. So suppose we have a button submit button code. input type equal to submit, value is equal to submit. Here you know that the type is attribute and the value of that uh, type and the value of that attribute is submit, and we will use this to give the property to this submit button. So in our style.css, first we will write the selector. Here input is a tag, so I write here input that works as an element selector. So after this, the we will initialize the attribute that is type here, and after this we will initialize the value, and here the value of type attribute is submit. Then after this start the curly bracket, and then give the properties, like we can give the properties to change the color in a red, and or it can be a color of white, but we should give the only one properties, that is color red or a white. Here I did mistake, sorry for this, and close the curly bracket. So now the color should be a white. So check out this in our code, copy this, go to our css selectors dot php. I can write code to title submit. Save this. You can see here is a submit button, not a submit button. Basically here is some mistake. Yes, I did not write the correct syntax. Here you can see here is a submit button. Now we will change the CSS properties of this submit button by using the CSS attribute selector. So just go to our PPT and copy this. Go to the style.css, and we can remove the extra property for the color, like white, and save our file, and let's check out this. Now the color should be a red. You can see the submit text color is now red. So this is a simple example of our CSS attribute selectors. And remember one thing: if you have any doubt about this session, because I know that the doubt can become, because here I teach you many things. So just write in the comment box, and you can send me your emails so that I can share you with this code, and so it will very helpful to you. So you can write your email ID in my comment box, and if you have any doubt you can also comment me. And thanks for watching. Bye. Now, one important thing: if you want to learn more about PHP programming, then you can check my other videos too. And I also shared a link of Amazon where you can buy the best book for PHP. And if this video helped you, then you can like and subscribe for up to date my new videos. Thanks for watching.